The cabin fell silent as the pilot's voice echoed through the intercom. All crew members are hereby terminated. Every head turned toward first class, toward Jasmine Washington. The calm black woman Trevor Miller had mocked only hours earlier. His smile vanished, replaced by the sick realization of who she truly was. She wasn't just a passenger, she was the new owner of Skyline Airways, and this flight was her test. The man who had dismissed her as out of place was now watching his career burn at 30,000 feet undone, not by anger, but by the quiet power of the woman he chose to underestimate. Jasmine Washington was not someone who sought the spotlight. At 34, the brilliant black entrepreneur had built her success through intelligence, persistence, and an uncanny ability to identify struggling businesses with untapped potential. 3 months ago, she had acquired Skyline Airways, a mid-sized carrier with decent routes but plummeting customer satisfaction scores and mounting financial troubles. The previous owners had blamed the pandemic fuel costs and everything except their own mismanagement. Jasmine, however, suspected deeper issues. During her due diligence before purchasing the airline, she had noticed concerning patterns in customer complaints, seemingly isolated incidents that, when mapped together, suggested systemic problems with how certain passengers were treated. "I need to experience this firsthand," Jasmine told her executive assistant, Maya Roberts, as they sat in Jasmine's sleek downtown Atlanta office. Numbers tell one story, but the real passenger experience might tell another. Maya raised an eyebrow. "You're going undercover." "Like undercover boss, something like that?" Jasmine replied, typing flight options into her laptop. "But nobody outside our immediate team can know. I'll book under my maiden name dress casually and see how Skyline treats a regular black woman traveling first class." Growing up in the modest Westview neighborhood of Atlanta, Jasmine had learned early that the world often judged her by her skin color before anything else. Her parents, her father, a postal worker, and her mother, an elementary school teacher, had instilled in her both resilience and ambition. "They'll underestimate you," her father used to say, "and that's when you'll show them exactly what you're made of." That mindset had carried her through Spelman College on a partial scholarship through her MBA at Wharton, where she was one of only 11 black women in her class, and through the founding of her tech company that specialized in logistics optimization. The aviation industry was her newest frontier, one that had fascinated her since childhood, when flights seemed like luxuries reserved for others. Jasmine spent the next week preparing meticulously. She studied Skyline service protocols, passenger rights documentation, and employee training materials. She scheduled a flight from Atlanta to San Francisco with a connection in Phoenix, a route that had received particularly mixed reviews. She packed light, deliberately choosing casual clothes rather than her usual tailored business attire. The night before her flight, she sat on her balcony overlooking the city lights, remembering previous travel experiences. There was the time a flight attendant had repeatedly asked to see her boarding pass for a first-class seat. The countless occasions when fellow passengers expressed surprise when she sat beside them in premium cabins. And the incident where a gate agent had assumed she was with another black family, rather than traveling alone. "Tomorrow will be interesting," she murmured to herself, wondering what she would discover about the company she now owned. As dawn broke, Jasmine felt a mixture of nervousness and determination. This wasn't just about quality control. It was about ensuring that the company she now led reflected values of dignity and respect for everyone. She had climbed too high to allow discriminatory practices to continue under her watch, even if they were subtle and rationalized away as misunderstandings. She called her driver, grabbed her carry-on, and headed toward Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport. Her first undercover mission as an airline owner officially underway. Phoenix Sky Harbor International Airport bustled with mid-afternoon activity as Jasmine stepped off her connecting flight from Atlanta. Her first leg had been uneventful standard service with nothing notably good or bad to report. But the real test would be this second flight to San Francisco, where the most concerning customer reviews had originated. Dressed in dark jeans, white sneakers, and a simple blue blouse beneath a lightweight cardigan, Jasmine blended perfectly with the crowd. Just another traveler, rather than the woman whose signature authorized payroll for everyone working the Skyline Airways counters. Her natural hair was styled in a neat twist, and she wore minimal makeup and only small stud earrings. Her only luxury item was her genuine leather carry-on, a gift from her parents when she earned her MBA. As she approached the security checkpoint for her terminal transfer, Jasmine noticed the subtle changes in expression that had become familiar throughout her life. The split-second evaluations, the slight narrowing of eyes. A TSA agent glanced at her first-class boarding pass, then back at her casual attire, his doubt evident, though unspoken. Transferring to San Francisco, he asked, his tone suggesting this was additional verification rather than casual conversation. "Yes," Jasmine replied, simply maintaining a pleasant but neutral expression as she placed her carry-on on the conveyor belt. Behind her, a white businessman in his 50s wearing khakis and a golf shirt was waved through with a friendly nod. When Jasmine passed through the body scanner, the same agent motioned her to step aside. "Random additional screening," he stated flatly. Jasmine complied without comment, mentally noting the interaction. After the extra pat-down and bag search revealed nothing of interest, she gathered her belongings and headed toward the Skyline Airways lounge, where she had 2 hours before her connecting flight. At the lounge entrance, a well-groomed receptionist with a nameplate reading Vanessa glanced up from her computer. "First class or membership card?" she asked, before Jasmine could speak her tone, suggesting she anticipated neither would be produced. "First class," Jasmine replied, sliding her boarding pass across the counter. Vanessa examined it with unusual scrutiny, checking the name multiple times against Jasmine's ID, before reluctantly granting access with directions that seemed unnecessarily detailed, as if Jasmine had never been in an airport lounge before. Inside, Jasmine selected a quiet corner seat that offered a good view of the operations desk. She ordered a sparkling water and opened her laptop, appearing to work while actually observing the staff interactions with various passengers. About 45 minutes before boarding was scheduled to begin, Jasmine noticed a group of Skyline flight attendants enter the lounge. They gathered near the bar, speaking in lowered voices that still carried in the quiet space. Their navy uniforms bore the silver wings that identified them as her employees. A tall, slim man with perfectly coiffed blonde hair appeared to be leading the conversation. His commanding presence and the difference shown by the others suggested he was senior among them. His name tag read, "Trevor Miller, Senior Flight Attendant." "Remember, folks, we're running a full first-class cabin to San Francisco today." Trevor was saying several platinum members and a couple of executives from tech companies. "Let's make sure our premium passengers get the service they're paying for." A younger flight attendant, whose name tag read Alicia Reyes, asked, "Did the special meal requests come through this time?" "We had that mix-up last week." Trevor dismissed the concern with a wave. "Just focus on the VIPs. I've highlighted them on the manifest. Anyone in 2A or 5C gets extra attention. They're frequent flyers who leave generous feedback." Jasmine noted how he emphasized certain passengers deserve preferential treatment beyond the standard first-class service, a direct contradiction to company policy that she'd reviewed, which stressed consistent quality for all premium cabin customers. As the crew prepared to leave, Trevor's gaze swept the lounge and briefly landed on Jasmine. Something in his expression changed a barely perceptible hardening before he turned away to address a young blonde flight attendant beside him. Though his voice dropped, Jasmine could still hear him. "Let's hope we don't have too many diversity upgrades today. The San Francisco route always seems to bring them out." The younger attendant looked uncomfortable, but said nothing as they exited toward the gate. Jasmine remained composed, though her hand tightened around her water glass. The term diversity upgrade was clearly coded language suggesting minority passengers who were perceived as not belonging in first class. That single comment confirmed her suspicions about the culture problems at Skyline, more than any customer review could have. When she reached the gate 30 minutes later, the standard boarding procedures were underway. As a first-class passenger, Jasmine joined the priority line. The gate agent, a woman with a nameplate reading Heather Campbell, was processing passengers efficiently until Jasmine stepped forward. "Barred boarding pass and ID, please." Heather requested her professional smile dimming slightly. Jasmine presented both items. Heather studied them far longer than she had for previous passengers. "You're in 3A?" she questioned, as if there must be some mistake. "Yes," Jasmine confirmed calmly. Heather scanned the boarding pass, frowned at her screen, then scanned it again. "And this is your correct name. Jasmine Washington." "It is," Jasmine replied, maintaining her composure while noting that no other passenger had been questioned about their identity after presenting matching ID and boarding pass. "One moment," Heather said, calling over a supervisor. They had a brief whispered conversation while Jasmine waited patiently, aware of the growing line behind her. Finally, with obvious reluctance, Heather returned the documents. "Enjoy your flight, Ms. Washington." As Jasmine walked down the jetway, she mentally tallied the series of small indignities she'd experienced in just under 3 hours at Phoenix Sky Harbor, all before even boarding the aircraft she technically owned. The familiar scent of recycled air and cleaning solution greeted Jasmine as she stepped aboard the Boeing 737. At the aircraft entrance stood Trevor Miller, the senior flight attendant she had observed in the lounge, wearing a practiced smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Welcome aboard," he said mechanically, barely glancing at her before his attention shifted to the passenger behind her, a grey-haired white man in a tailored suit whom Trevor immediately greeted with genuine warmth. "Mr. Peterson, wonderful to see you again. Your usual scotch once we're airborne." Jasmine continued down the aisle, noting the stark difference in greeting. At the entrance to the first-class cabin, another flight attendant, Alicia Reyes, the same young woman from the lounge, smiled genuinely. "Welcome to first class. May I help you find your seat?" she offered. "I'm in 3A. "Thank you," Jasmine replied, appreciating the normal courtesy. Right this way, Alicia guided her, helping stow her carry-on in the overhead compartment. "First time flying Skyline?" "First time on this route," Jasmine answered truthfully. "Well, we're glad to have you with us. If you need anything during the flight, just press your call button." As Jasmine settled into her window seat, she observed the remaining first-class passengers boarding. Each received the enthusiastic greeting from Trevor that she had been denied. An older couple, both white, were addressed by name without checking their boarding passes. A young white tech entrepreneur type was engaged in friendly banter about his latest device. The seat beside Jasmine remained empty until final boarding, when a distinguished-looking man in his late 50s approached. Harrison Blake. Jasmine recognized him immediately as the CEO of a mid-sized pharmaceutical company. She had met him briefly at a business conference last year, though he showed no sign of recognizing her in her casual attire. As Blake took his seat, he gave Jasmine a quick evaluating glance before turning to catch Trevor's attention with a small gesture. The flight attendant rushed over immediately. "Mr. Blake, welcome aboard. We weren't expecting you today." "What a pleasure." Trevor gushed completely, ignoring Jasmine's presence. "Can I get you a pre-departure beverage? Perhaps the champagne." "Bourbon." "Neat," Blake replied, then added in a voice just loud enough for Jasmine to hear. "Quite the interesting seating arrangement today. I suppose the diversity initiatives are reaching even the airlines now." Trevor's smile faltered for just a moment before he leaned in slightly. "We do our best to accommodate everyone, sir. I'll be right back with your drink." The implication was clear. Both men assumed Jasmine had been upgraded due to some diversity program rather than having purchased her ticket legitimately. The fact that Trevor had validated this assumption rather than professionally ignoring the inappropriate comment was telling. When Trevor returned with Blake's bourbon, Jasmine noticed he had brought beverages for every first-class passenger except her. When he turned to leave, she pressed her call button. Trevor's expression tightened almost imperceptibly as he returned to her row. "Yes, I'd like a sparkling water with lime, please," Jasmine requested politely. "We'll be starting our beverage service shortly after takeoff," he replied dismissively. "Everyone else in first class has received their pre-departure beverage," Jasmine pointed out, maintaining a calm, even tone. "I'd like the same service, please." For a moment, it seemed Trevor might refuse, but Alicia appeared beside him. "I'll get that right away for you," she offered, moving toward the galley before Trevor could object. Trevor's jaw tightened as he turned to attend to another passenger. From the row behind her, Jasmine overheard him muttering to flight attendant Rachel Thompson, "Some people just aren't used to the etiquette of premium travel." Blake smirked beside her, taking a long sip of his bourbon as if enjoying a private joke. When Alicia returned with the sparkling water, she placed it carefully on Jasmine's tray table. "Here you are. We'll be taking off shortly, but let me know if you need anything else." "Thank you, Alicia," Jasmine replied, making a point to use the flight attendant's name. She noticed Trevor watching the exchange with obvious disapproval from the front of the cabin. As the boarding process completed and the aircraft doors closed, Jasmine observed the crew's final preparations. Through the subtle interactions and body language, she could see the cabin social hierarchy clearly. Trevor at the top dictating the atmosphere. Alicia trying to provide good service while navigating Trevor's apparent biases. Rachel somewhere in the middle, uncomfortable but unwilling to challenge the status quo. And passengers like Blake who benefited from and reinforced the discriminatory culture. The aircraft pushed back from the gate, and Captain Raymond Harris's voice came over the intercom, welcoming everyone aboard Skyline Airways Flight 1142 to San Francisco. As they taxied toward the runway, Jasmine mentally prepared for the 3-hour flight ahead, an undercover mission that was already revealing more problems than she had anticipated. What would happen next? Have you ever been treated differently on a flight because of how you look? Comment 1 if you've experienced discrimination while traveling, and 2 if you've witnessed it happening to someone else. Don't forget to like and subscribe to support more stories that expose the reality of everyday discrimination. Now let's see how this uncomfortable flight situation develops. The seatbelt sign dinged off 30 minutes after takeoff, signaling the beginning of the in-flight service. First class on Skyline Airways was known for its premium offerings, a point emphasized in their marketing materials that Jasmine had studied thoroughly. The airline prided itself on attentive personalized service, especially for its 16 first-class passengers. Trevor emerged from the galley with practiced efficiency approaching the first row where an older white couple sat. "Mr. and Mrs. Davidson, would you care for a drink before your meals?" He methodically worked his way through the cabin, taking drink orders from each passenger, engaging in friendly banter, and providing recommendations for wine pairings with the upcoming meal service to everyone except Jasmine. When he reached her row, he took Harrison Blake's order for another bourbon, with detailed preferences about the brand and ice, then immediately turned to the passengers in the row behind. Jasmine raised her hand slightly. "Excuse me." Trevor's expression flickered with annoyance before settling into a mask of professional detachment. "Yes, I haven't ordered my drink yet," Jasmine stated simply. "I'll be circling back," he replied dismissively, continuing to the next row. Blake raised an eyebrow beside her, but said nothing, sipping the last of his pre-departure bourbon. When Trevor returned to the galley, Alicia approached with a tray of nuts being warned for the first-class cabin. Unlike Trevor, she distributed them to all passengers, including Jasmine. "Would you like something to drink?" Alicia asked quietly when she reached Jasmine's seat. "Red wine would be lovely." "Thank you," Jasmine replied. Blake interjected. "Trevor's handling the beverages, isn't he?" Alicia's smile remained fixed, though her eyes reflected discomfort. "We work as a team, sir. I'll make sure your next bourbon comes right out as well." As Alicia departed, Trevor emerged from the galley with a tray of drinks. He served each row methodically, once again skipping Jasmine while delivering Blake's bourbon with special attention. When he completed the service, Jasmine again found herself without a beverage. She pressed the call button. Trevor approached his composure, slipping slightly. "Yes, I still haven't received my drink," Jasmine stated calmly. "What was your order again?" he asked, though she had never been given the opportunity to place one. "I didn't get to order. I'd like a glass of red wine, please. We're preparing for meal service now." "I'll include it with your meal," he replied, reaching up to turn off her call button before walking away. From the corner of her eye, Jasmine could see Rachel Thompson, watching the interaction from the galley, looking uncomfortable, but remaining silent. When meal service began, Trevor distributed the meals with the same pattern of selective attention. When he reached Jasmine's row, he placed Blake's meal with care, describing each element of the dish with enthusiasm. For Jasmine, he practically dropped the tray on her table. "Wait," Jasmine said before he could rush away. "I requested a vegetarian meal when I booked my ticket." Trevor's expression shifted to one of exaggerated regret that didn't match his tone. "I don't show any special meal requests for your seat. Perhaps you forgot to confirm it." "I received a confirmation email," Jasmine replied, maintaining her composure though her patience was wearing thin. "Well, there's nothing I can do about it now, is there?" Trevor responded, his tone suggesting the oversight was entirely her fault. "You'll have to make do with removing the chicken from the pasta." "Actually," Alicia interjected, appearing beside Trevor with another tray. "There was one extra vegetarian meal in the galley. I think there might have been a mix-up with the manifest." She carefully placed the correct meal in front of Jasmine. Trevor's jaw tightened visibly. "Alicia, I need you in the galley," he said sharply before turning away. "Thank you, Alicia," Jasmine said meaningfully. As Jasmine began her meal, she could hear Trevor's hushed but harsh reprimand to Alicia in the galley. "Don't undermine me with passengers. If they don't confirm their special meals that's on them, these people need to learn how the system works." The "these people" comment hung in the air, its implication unmistakable. Blake seemed to be enjoying the drama beside her, commenting between bites. "Staff these days just don't have the training they used to. When I started flying in the 9s, the flight attendants knew their place." Jasmine chose not to engage, instead documenting notes on her phone about each interaction while appearing to check emails. Midway through the meal, Trevor accidentally bumped Jasmine's elbow while serving Blake another bourbon, causing her to spill water on her tray. "Oh, my apologies," Trevor said with transparent insincerity. "Tight quarters in here?" Jasmine noticed Rachel watching the incident with visible concern from the jump seat, making brief eye contact before looking away quickly. Throughout the meal service, a clear pattern emerged. Passengers who fit Trevor's profile of a premium customer received attentive, personalized service, while Jasmine was treated as an inconvenience to be tolerated rather than a paying first-class customer to be served. What's your take on this situation? Have you ever witnessed someone in a service position abusing their authority? Like Trevor, comment 1, if you think Jasmine should report him immediately, or 2, if you think she should continue gathering evidence. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more real stories about standing up to discrimination. The question is, how long will Jasmine tolerate this treatment before revealing who she really is? Let's find out. 2 hours into the flight, the cabin had settled into a quiet rhythm. Most passengers were either working on laptops, watching movies, or napping under the soft blue ceiling lights of the first-class cabin. Jasmine had been documenting every interaction discreetly on her phone, building a comprehensive record of the discriminatory treatment she'd received. Trevor moved through the cabin, offering drink refills his attention, following the now familiar pattern of selective service. When he reached Harrison Blake, he leaned in with conspiratorial familiarity. "Another bourbon, Mr. Blake. We have about an hour before landing." "Why not?" Blake replied with a self-satisfied chuckle. "Makes dealing with San Francisco traffic more bearable." As Trevor turned to prepare the drink, the aircraft encountered mild turbulence. The sudden motion caused him to stumble slightly, and when he returned with Blake's bourbon, he lost his balance again, just as he extended the glass. The amber liquid splashed across the armrest and onto Jasmine's white blouse, spreading a large dark stain across the fabric. "Oh," Trevor exclaimed, his tone suggesting surprise, but his expression revealing something closer to satisfaction. "How clumsy of me." Jasmine remained perfectly still, the cold liquid seeping through to her skin. "Could I have some club soda and napkins, please?" she requested calmly. "Of course," Trevor replied, though he made no immediate move to retrieve the items. "These things happen when there's turbulence. Just one of those unfortunate accidents." "It didn't seem that turbulent," Blake remarked with a smirk, clearly amused by Jasmine's predicament. Trevor handed Jasmine a single cocktail napkin, far from sufficient for the spill, before turning his attention back to Blake. "Let me get you a fresh drink, sir. I apologize for the wait. I need proper cleaning supplies," Jasmine stated firmly, her patience finally wearing thin. club soda, several napkins, and perhaps a towel if you have one. When I have a moment, Trevor replied dismissively, I need to take care of this gentleman's drink first. After all, he's a loyal Skyline passenger. The emphasis on loyal carried an unmistakable insinuation. I'm also a Skyline passenger, Jasmine pointed out in a first-class seat that I paid for, and I'd appreciate being treated with basic courtesy. Trevor's expression hardened. I'll be with you when I can. Perhaps you could be a bit more patient and understanding of our workflow. As Trevor walked away, Blake leaned over slightly. You know, not everyone is cut out for premium travel. There are budget airlines that might be more accommodating to your needs. The comment was the final straw. Jasmine turned to face Blake directly, her voice low but clear. My needs are quite simple, Mr. Blake. Basic human respect and the service promised when I purchased this ticket. Neither seems particularly unreasonable. Trevor returned with Blake's fresh bourbon, but nothing for Jasmine's spill. As Blake accepted the drink with a satisfied nod, Jasmine stood up, careful not to bump into either man in the confined space. Excuse me, Trevor, she said, using his name deliberately. Since you seem unable to provide assistance, I'll find someone who can. Ma'am, the seatbelt sign could come on at any moment. Trevor replied, his voice taking on a warning tone. You need to remain seated. The sign is currently off, and I have a right to use the lavatory and request service from another crew member when needed. Jasmine stated factually, her professional experience with aviation regulations evident in her response. As she stepped into the aisle, Alicia appeared with a club soda towel and stack of napkins. I heard what happened. This should help with the stain, she offered quietly. Thank you, Alicia, Jasmine replied, accepting the items gratefully. Trevor's face flushed with anger. Alicia, I told you to prepare the galley for landing. I'm handling this section. It's clear you're not handling it at all. Jasmine interjected, her voice remaining measured but firm. In fact, I'd like your employee identification number. The request landed like a bomb in the quiet cabin. Several nearby passengers looked up from their devices. Excuse me, Trevor's voice rose slightly. Your employee ID number, Jasmine repeated. As a passenger who has experienced continual discriminatory treatment since boarding, I have the right to formally identify the staff involved in any subsequent complaint. Trevor's demeanor shifted instantly from dismissive to defensive. Discriminatory. I've been nothing but professional. If anything, you've been difficult and demanding throughout this flight. I've requested exactly the same service as every other passenger in this cabin, Jasmine countered calmly. The only difference is how you've chosen to treat me, and we both know why that is. Oh, here we go. Trevor scoffed, abandoning any pretense of professionalism, playing the race card when you don't get special treatment. Just because you somehow ended up in first class doesn't mean what exactly does somehow ended up mean. Jasmine interrupted, her voice still controlled but carrying an unmistakable edge of authority that made Trevor pause momentarily. Blake chose this moment to interject, apparently unable to resist involving himself. Look, some people just aren't used to how things work in premium cabins. There's an etiquette to it. I fly over $70,000 MI annually, Mr. Blake. Jasmine responded without looking at him, her eyes fixed steadily on Trevor. I'm quite familiar with first-class etiquette. What I'm experiencing today isn't about etiquette, it's about bias. Trevor's face darkened. I don't have to stand here and be accused of. Your ID number, please, Jasmine repeated firmly. Or shall I ask the captain to provide it? At the mention of the captain, Rachel Thompson, who had been observing from nearby, stepped forward. Trevor, perhaps we should call Maria. Trevor shot her a warning look before turning back to Jasmine. Fine. You want to file a complaint? Go ahead. He pointed aggressively to his name badge. Trevor Miller, do your worst. But I guarantee any investigation will show you've been the problem on this flight, not me. The confrontation had now drawn the attention of the entire first-class cabin. Passengers were either watching openly or pretending not to notice while straining to hear every word. In the sudden silence that followed Trevor's outburst, the intercom chimed. Senior flight attendant to the galley. Please, came a female voice, presumably Maria, the person Trevor had mentioned. Trevor glared at Jasmine one final time before turning sharply on his heel. This conversation is over. Return to your seat immediately. As Trevor stormed toward the galley, Alicia approached Jasmine with concern. Are you okay? I can help you clean up in the lavatory if you'd like. Thank you, Alicia, Jasmine replied, her composure intact despite the confrontation. I appreciate your professionalism throughout this flight. From behind them, Blake's voice carried with deliberate volume. Some people just can't help making scenes. Absolutely classless. Jasmine ignored the comment, gathering her dignity, along with the cleaning supplies Alicia had provided, and made her way to the lavatory to address the bourbon stain and to prepare for what would inevitably come next. Maria Thompson, the lead purser with 20 years of experience at Skyline Airways, emerged from the galley with the practiced, neutral expression of someone accustomed to mediating passenger conflicts. Her salt and pepper hair was pulled back in a neat bun, and her uniform was immaculate. Behind her stood Trevor, arms crossed and jaw set in defiance. Jasmine had returned to her seat after doing her best to remove the bourbon stain in the lavatory. The wet patch on her blouse was still visible, but less pronounced. As Maria approached, Jasmine noticed Alicia hovering nearby, concern evident in her expression. Ma'am, I understand there's been some discomfort during your flight today. Maria began diplomatically positioning herself in the aisle next to Jasmine's row. I'm Maria Thompson, the purser on this flight. How can I help resolve the situation? Before Jasmine could respond, Trevor interjected. She's been disruptive and confrontational, Maria making unfounded accusations and demanding special treatment. Maria held up a hand slightly, silencing Trevor without looking at him. I'd like to hear from the passenger first, please. She turned back to Jasmine. Miss Washington, is it? Could you share your concerns? Thank you, Miss Thompson, Jasmine replied evenly. Since boarding in Phoenix, I've been subjected to a pattern of discriminatory treatment by your senior flight attendant. I've been repeatedly skipped during service, had my legitimate requests dismissed, experienced a lost meal request that was mysteriously found by another attendant, had a drink spilled on me with minimal assistance offered, and most recently been directly insulted with comments suggesting I don't belong in this cabin. Maria's expression remained professional, though her eyes flicked briefly to Trevor. I apologize for any impression of poor service. I assure you that Skyline Airways takes all passenger concerns seriously. This isn't about an impression, Jasmine clarified. I've been documenting specific incidents throughout this flight. She held up her phone where her detailed notes were visible. What I've experienced goes well beyond poor service. It's textbook discriminatory treatment based on racial bias. Trevor stepped forward, his face flushed. That's absolutely ridiculous. I've provided the same service to everyone. She's clearly playing the race card because she didn't get preferential treatment. I haven't requested preferential treatment, Jasmine corrected calmly. I've only asked for equal treatment. Harrison Blake, who had been quietly observing the exchange with evident amusement, decided to insert himself into the situation. If I might offer a perspective as a regular first-class passenger, he began with affected reasonableness. I think the young lady might be overreacting. Trevor has been nothing but professional this entire flight. To you, perhaps, Jasmine noted without looking at Blake. Your experience isn't universal, Mr. Blake. Maria's eyes narrowed slightly at Blake's intrusion, but she maintained her professional demeanor. Sir, thank you for your input, but I need to address this passenger-specific concerns. I'm just saying, Blake continued undeterred, that some people are looking for reasons to be offended. Trevor's one of your best crew members. I fly with him regularly. Jasmine turned fully to face Maria. Ms. Thompson, I'm not interested in debating my lived experience with someone who hasn't been subjected to the same treatment. What I am interested in is accountability. Trevor scoffed. Accountability for what? Doing my job. Let me tell you something. That's enough, Trevor. Maria interrupted firmly, finally betraying some discomfort with how the situation was escalating. She turned back to Jasmine, lowering her voice slightly. Ms. Washington, I understand you're upset. Perhaps we could speak privately in the galley. I'm not upset, Ms. Thompson. I'm resolute, Jasmine replied, maintaining eye contact. And I prefer to remain at my seat. The issues I'm raising shouldn't require privacy unless Skyline has something to hide. Maria seemed taken aback by Jasmine's composed determination. Most passengers, when faced with a purser's intervention, typically accepted the path of least resistance. Jasmine clearly was not most passengers. Very well, Maria conceded. What would you like us to do to address your concerns? First, I'd like Mr. Miller's employee ID number, as I've requested several times. Second, I want to file a formal complaint that will be registered with Skyline corporate offices, not simply noted in your flight report. And third, I want an acknowledgement that the treatment I've received today is unacceptable. Trevor's patient snapped. This is absurd. Maria, she's being completely unreasonable. I've done nothing wrong. You referred to me as these people suggested I didn't belong in first class and deliberately provided substandard service compared to other passengers, Jasmine enumerated calmly. All of which I've documented. Trevor's face contorted with anger. You know what I'm done with this. She's threatening me, Maria. I want her restrained until we land, and I want her met by security in San Francisco. Maria's eyes widened. Trevor, that's not. She's disruptive, and making the cabin uncomfortable for legitimate passengers. Trevor insisted, his voice rising. As senior flight attendant, I'm invoking safety protocols. Either back me up, or I'll take this to the captain. The tension in the cabin had reached a breaking point. Several passengers were openly watching now, some looking uncomfortable with Trevor's escalating behavior. Alicia had moved closer, clearly conflicted about whether to intervene. Rachel stood near the galley entrance, her expression stricken. That won't be necessary, came a new voice from behind them. Captain Raymond Harris had emerged from the cockpit, likely alerted by the growing disturbance. His commanding presence immediately shifted the dynamic. Captain, Trevor began, a note of relief in his voice. This passenger has been causing. Captain Harris held up a hand, silencing him. I've been briefed by the first officer who overheard part of this exchange through the cabin door. Miss Washington, is it? Jasmine nodded, studying the captain's face. Something in his expression suggested he might recognize her, though he gave no overt indication. I apologize for any distress during your flight today, he continued professionally. Rest assured we take these matters very seriously at Skyline Airways. Trevor seemed to relax slightly, assuming the captain was engaging in standard customer service damage control. Sir, as I was explaining to Maria, this passenger has been making unfounded accusations. Man. Actually, Jasmine interrupted, her voice calm, but carrying a sudden weight that made Trevor pause. They're not unfounded at all, and I believe it's time we stopped pretending. She reached into her purse and removed a small leather wallet. Flipping it open, she revealed an ID card with the Skyline Airways corporate logo, her photograph, and a title that made Trevor's face drain of color. Jasmine Washington, Chief Executive Officer. The silence that fell over the first-class cabin was absolute. The revelation landed like a thunderclap in the hushed cabin. Trevor's face cycled through expressions of disbelief, horror, and dawning comprehension as he stared at the ID card in Jasmine's hand. Maria Thompson's professional mask slipped for the first time, her eyes widening in shock. Behind her, Alicia pressed a hand to her mouth, while Rachel froze in place, like a statue. That's impossible. Trevor stammered, his voice barely audible. The CEO is who? Mr. Miller, Jasmine asked, her tone carrying the quiet authority she typically reserved for boardrooms. An older white man, someone who looks like your preferred passengers, perhaps. Captain Harris cleared his throat. Ms. Washington purchased Skyline Airways 3 months ago. I attended the executive briefing when the acquisition was announced. He turned to Trevor. This is indeed our CEO. Harrison Blake, who had been smugly observing the confrontation moments earlier, now sat rigid in his seat, his expression frozen in horrified realization. The bourbon in his hand remained untouched, forgotten. I don't understand. Maria managed, struggling to reconcile this information with the situation she'd been attempting to manage. Why would you be flying as a regular passenger without informing the crew? Because this is exactly what I needed to see. Jasmine replied, her gaze sweeping over the gathered crew members. Not how you treat Jasmine Washington, CEO, but how you treat Jasmine Washington, an ordinary black woman in first class. The implications of her words settled heavily on everyone within earshot. Trevor seemed to physically shrink, his earlier bravado evaporating as the full weight of his actions crashed down upon him. "Ms. Washington," he began, his voice now trembling, "there's been a terrible misunderstanding. I had no idea." "That's precisely the problem, Mr. Miller," Jasmine interrupted. "Your behavior shouldn't change based on who you think I am. Every passenger deserves respect, regardless of their title, appearance, or background." She turned to Captain Harris. "Captain, I'll need to make an urgent call. I assume the aircraft is equipped with satellite communications." "Yes, ma'am," he confirmed. "You can use the secure line in the cockpit if needed." "Thank you. And I'll need all crew members involved in this incident to remain aboard after we land in San Francisco. My team will be waiting to take statements." Trevor's face had turned ashen. "Ms. Washington, please, if I could just explain." "Your actions have spoken loudly enough, Mr. Miller," Jasmine replied, her tone not angry but resolute. "Discrimination isn't a misunderstanding. It's a choice you've made repeatedly throughout this flight." Harrison Blake, apparently sensing an opportunity to salvage his own position, leaned forward. "Ms. Washington, I had no idea. Please allow me to introduce myself properly. Harrison Blake, CEO of Meridian Pharmaceuticals. Perhaps we could discuss potential synergies between our companies over dinner in San Francisco." The naked opportunism in his abrupt change of demeanor was almost comical. Just minutes earlier, he had been belittling her and supporting Trevor's discriminatory behavior. Jasmine turned to him with a coolly professional smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Mr. Blake, I'm familiar with Meridian Pharmaceuticals. Unfortunately, I make it a policy not to do business with individuals who tacitly approve of discrimination until it becomes inconvenient for them." Blake recoiled as if slapped, his face reining. Alicia stepped forward hesitantly. "M. Washington, I want to say I noticed what was happening, and I tried to. I should have done more, and I'm sorry." Jasmine's expression softened slightly. "Well, discuss that during the review. Ms. Reyes, your efforts didn't go unnoticed." Maria Thompson had finally regained her composure enough to take charge of the deteriorating situation. "Trevor, Rachel, please return to the galley and prepare for landing procedures. I'll handle the rest of the service for first class." Trevor didn't move immediately, seeming paralyzed by the catastrophic turn of events. Now Maria insisted quietly but firmly. As Trevor finally retreated to the galley with Rachel, Captain Harris turned to Jasmine. "Ms. Washington, if you'll follow me to the cockpit for your call." Jasmine nodded, rising from her seat. As she moved toward the front of the aircraft, she could feel the eyes of every first-class passenger following her. Their expressions a mixture of shock, embarrassment, and in some cases, a grudging respect. In the cockpit, Captain Harris closed the door and gestured to the jump seat. "I apologize for not recognizing you immediately, Miss Washington. We've only met once at the leadership conference last month." "No apology necessary, Captain Harris. Anonymity was precisely what I needed today." Jasmine accepted the satellite phone he offered. "Though I wish what I discovered had been different." As she dialed, Harris asked quietly, "May I ask what you're planning?" Jasmine paused, her finger hovering over the call button. "Accountability, Captain. Something that's been missing at Skyline for too long." She pressed the button, and after 2 rings, a voice answered. "Gregory Wilson, HR Director." "Gregory, it's Jasmine Washington." Her voice shifted into the crisp, authoritative tone of a CEO handling a crisis. "I need you and the legal team at SFO. When we land Gate 34B in approximately 40 minutes, and I'll need security to detain certain crew members for immediate questioning." As she outlined the situation and her requirements, Captain Harris returned to the cockpit controls, giving her privacy while preparing for their final approach to San Francisco. Through the cockpit window, the late afternoon sun glinted off the distant skyscrapers of the city where the corporate team she had summoned would soon be rushing to meet their flight. The revelation was complete, the mask was off, and the reckoning was just beginning. The atmosphere aboard Flight 1142 transformed dramatically during the final 30 minutes to San Francisco. Captain Harris returned to the cabin briefly to make an announcement that caught everyone's attention. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. We'll be landing at San Francisco International Airport in approximately 30 minutes. However, I must inform you that there will be a slight delay in deplaning. We have some administrative matters to address upon arrival. We appreciate your patience and understanding." The vague announcement prompted curious murmurs throughout the cabin, though the first-class passengers who had witnessed the confrontation exchanged knowing glances. Harrison Blake remained uncharacteristically silent, scrolling frantically through his phone as if searching for information on Jasmine Washington and Skyline Airways' recent acquisition. In the galley, Trevor huddled with Maria and Rachel, their hushed, urgent conversation occasionally rising in volume before being hastily lowered again. Trevor's gestures became increasingly agitated as Maria appeared to be giving him firm instructions. Jasmine returned to her seat, her expression composed and focused. She opened her laptop and began typing rapidly, pausing occasionally to review her notes from the flight. When Alicia approached to check that her seatbelt was fastened for landing, Jasmine looked up with a measured gaze. "M. Reyes, I'd appreciate it if you could join me for a brief conversation after we land," Jasmine said quietly. Uncertainty flickered across Alicia's face. Is my position in jeopardy as well?" "That depends on our conversation," Jasmine replied neutrally. "But I believe in evaluating each situation individually." As the aircraft began its descent into San Francisco, the typical landing procedures continued with a strained professionalism. Trevor remained absent from the first-class cabin, with Maria handling the final checks instead. The tension was palpable like electricity before a storm. When the wheels touched down at SFO, a collective exhale seemed to pass through the cabin. The aircraft taxied to Gate 34B, and Captain Harris's voice came over the intercom once more. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have arrived at San Francisco International Airport. As mentioned, we have some administrative matters to address before deplaning. All passengers, except those in first class, may gather their belongings and proceed to the exits when instructed. First-class passengers, we ask for your patience for approximately 15 minutes. Thank you for flying Skyline Airways." The announcement prompted confused looks among the economy passengers, but they complied, filing past the closed curtain that now separated them from the drama unfolding in first class. As the last economy passenger exited, the main cabin door opened again. Gregory Wilson, Skyline's HR director, entered, followed by 2 members of the legal team and 4 uniformed Skyline security officers. Gregory, a tall black man in his early 50s with a precisely trimmed beard, nodded respectfully to Jasmine. Ms. Washington, he greeted her formally, maintaining the professional distance she had requested for this operation. "Mr. Wilson, thank you for coming on such short notice," Jasmine replied, standing to address the assembled team. "We have a situation that requires immediate attention." She turned to the security officers. "I need Mr. Trevor Miller, senior flight attendant, detained for questioning. He is to surrender his company credentials immediately. The same applies to Maria Thompson, though she will be questioned separately." The security team moved efficiently toward the galley, where Trevor and Maria waited, their faces masks of apprehension. "What's happening?" Trevor demanded as the officers approached. "You can't just, Mr. Miller," one of the security officers interrupted firmly. "Please surrender your credentials and come with us." Trevor looked wildly around the cabin, seeking support that wasn't forthcoming. "This is insane. I've been with Skyline for 12 years. You can't just fire me over one misunderstanding." Jasmine stepped forward, her presence commanding the space despite her still stained blouse. "This isn't about one misunderstanding, Mr. Miller. I've reviewed customer complaint data for the past 6 months. Your name appears in 27 separate complaints regarding discriminatory treatment, primarily from passengers of color. Today wasn't an isolated incident. It was simply the first time you've been caught by someone who can hold you accountable." The revelation struck Trevor like a physical blow. His shoulders slumped as the security officers escorted him toward the exit. Maria followed with another team, her expression resigned but composed. Jasmine turned to the remaining first-class passengers. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the delay and for having witnessed this unfortunate situation. Skyline Airways is committed to providing respectful, equitable service to all our passengers. What you've observed today represents a failure of that commitment, one that is being addressed immediately. Her gaze settled briefly on Harrison Blake. Some of you participated in or encouraged the discriminatory behavior you witnessed. I hope this serves as a moment of reflection. Blake avoided her eyes, gathering his belongings with uncharacteristic haste. As the first-class passengers finally began to deplane, Jasmine gestured for Alicia to join her in the now empty row 1. Ms. Reyes. Jasmine began once they were seated. I noticed your attempts to provide equitable service despite the environment created by your senior colleagues. Alicia's hands twisted nervously in her lap. I wanted to do more, Miss Washington. I should have spoken up directly when I saw how you were being treated. Standing up against discrimination in a workplace with established power dynamics isn't easy, Jasmine acknowledged. But it is necessary. Tell me, how long have you worked for Skyline? 3 years next month, Alicia replied. It's my first airline job after hospitality school. Jasmine nodded thoughtfully. And in those 3 years, how often have you witnessed the kind of treatment I received today? Alicia hesitated, then answered honestly. More than I'd like to admit, Ms. Washington. It's not uncommon, especially on certain routes. I suspected as much, Jasmine. Alicia, I'm implementing immediate changes at Skyline. One of those changes will be a comprehensive amphibious training program for all customer-facing staff. I'm also creating a new senior position focused specifically on inclusive customer experience. She paused, studying Alicia's face. Based on what I observed today, I believe you have the awareness and instincts needed for such a role. I'd like you to consider joining the development team for this initiative with the potential for advancement if you're interested. Alicia's eyes widened in surprise. Me? But I'm just a junior flight attendant. Sometimes the most valuable perspectives come from those who notice problems without having the power to fix them, Jasmine replied. That's changing at Skyline starting today. As they concluded their conversation, Captain Harris approached, having completed his post-flight checks. Ms. Washington, the aircraft is secure. Your corporate team has arranged transportation to headquarters for the debriefing. Thank you, Captain Harris, Jasmine responded, gathering her belongings. I appreciate your professionalism throughout this situation. Just doing my job, ma'am, he replied, though his expression suggested he knew the significance of the day's events. Though, if I may say so, I believe these changes are long overdue at Skyline. As Jasmine exited the aircraft, stepping onto the jet bridge where her executive team waited, she paused briefly to look back at the Boeing 737 that had served as the stage for this necessary reckoning. The aftermath was just beginning. By tomorrow, policies would be rewritten, personnel changes would be implemented, and the culture at Skyline Airways would begin its transformation. What had started as a simple quality control check had revealed a systemic problem, one that Jasmine Washington was now positioned and determined to solve. 6 months had passed since the infamous Flight 1142 from Phoenix to San Francisco, an incident that had transformed Skyline Airways from the inside out. On this crisp October morning, Jasmine Washington stood at the podium in Skyline's newly renovated corporate headquarters, addressing a room filled with media representatives, industry colleagues, and the airline's leadership team. Today marks the completion of our company-wide Respect in Flight initiative. Jasmine announced her confidence and authority evident in every word. What began as a troubling discovery has evolved into a comprehensive overhaul of how Skyline approaches customer service, employee training, and corporate accountability. The screens behind her displayed impressive metrics. Customer satisfaction scores up 23%, discrimination complaints down 78%, and employee retention improved by 15%. The transformation hadn't been easy, but the results were undeniable. When I boarded that flight 6 months ago, I didn't expect to uncover systemic discrimination within our ranks, Jasmine continued. But addressing these issues head-on has not only aligned our practices with our values, it significantly improved our business outcomes. In the front row sat Alicia Reyes, now wearing the navy blazer of Skyline's management team. As the newly appointed Director of Inclusive Customer Experience, she had been instrumental in developing training protocols that had since been adopted by 3 other airlines. Her promotion had made headlines in industry publications highlighting Skyline's commitment to elevating employees who demonstrated both integrity and innovation. I'd like to recognise Alicia Reyes, whose courage and commitment to serving all passengers equally exemplifies the Skyline spirit we're building. Jasmine said, gesturing toward Alicia as applause filled the room. The aftermath of Flight 1142 had been swift and decisive. Trevor Miller, Maria Thompson, and 3 other crew members had been immediately terminated for violations of company policy civil rights regulations, and in Trevor's case, a pattern of documented discriminatory behaviour that had been repeatedly overlooked by previous management. Heather Campbell, the gate agent who had questioned Jasmine's first-class ticket, had received a formal reprimand and mandatory retraining. Rachel Thompson, who had witnessed the discrimination but failed to intervene effectively, had been suspended and eventually transferred to a non-customer-facing role following her completion of extensive anti-bias training. The changes at Skyline went far beyond personnel actions. Within weeks of the incident, Jasmine had implemented a comprehensive mystery passenger program with diverse individuals regularly flying as undercover quality control agents on all routes. This program had quickly identified and addressed similar issues throughout the Skyline network. Our mystery passenger program has conducted over 500 anonymous quality assessments across our entire route system, Jasmine explained to the assembled media. These evaluations have been instrumental in identifying areas for improvement and ensuring our new standards are being implemented consistently. The corporate culture shift had extended to passengers as well. Skyline now prominently displayed its zero-tolerance discrimination policy during boarding in in-flight materials and throughout all customer touchpoints. Passengers who violated these standards faced consequences, as Harrison Blake had discovered when attempting to book a Skyline flight 3 weeks after the incident, only to find himself banned from the airline for 12 months. After the press conference concluded, Jasmine met with her executive team in the boardroom overlooking the tarmac, where Skyline aircraft arrived and departed in their newly refreshed livery. Still navy blue, but now accented with bold stripes in diverse skin tones, symbolizing the airline's commitment to serving all passengers with equal respect. The quarterly numbers exceed projections. Chief Financial Officer Marcus Johnson reported, sliding the report across the polished table. It turns out treating people with dignity is also good for the bottom line. It shouldn't be revolutionary, Jasmine remarked. But apparently it is. Any updates on the industry response? Gregory Wilson, who had been promoted to Chief People Officer, smiled slightly. 3 competing airlines have reached out about licensing our training program. And there's something else you should know. Trevor Miller has been attempting to find employment with other carriers. Attempting? Jasmine inquired, raising an eyebrow. Without success, Gregory confirmed. While we didn't actively blacklist him, the incident report is available to any airline that conducts a standard reference check. He's currently working as a hotel concierge in Phoenix. Jasmine nodded thoughtfully. Actions have consequences. Speaking of which, how is our legal settlement with the affected passengers progressing? The General Counsel cleared her throat. All but 2 have accepted our offer of compensation and lifetime status upgrade. The remaining cases should be resolved by month end. After the meeting, Jasmine walked through the terminal for her flight to Chicago, where she would be speaking at an industry conference on corporate ethics. Unlike 6 months ago, she was traveling openly as the CEO. Her tailored suit and company ID badge identifying her position clearly. As she approached the Skyline gate, she observed the boarding process with careful attention. The gate agents greeted each passenger with consistent courtesy, regardless of appearance or travel class. The boarding announcements were clear and respectful. The promised transformation seemed to be taking hold. Ms. Washington, welcome aboard. The gate agent greeted her warmly. It's an honor to have you flying with us today. Thank you, Jasmine replied with a smile. But please treat me exactly as you would any other passenger. That's our policy now, the young man replied confidently. Every passenger receives the same respect first-class service for everyone regardless of where they're seated. As Jasmine settled into her seat for the 3-hour flight to Chicago, she reflected on how a single difficult experience had catalyzed meaningful change. The airline she had acquired as a business opportunity had become something more, a platform for demonstrating that accountability, inclusion, and respect weren't just moral imperatives, but competitive advantages. Captain Laura Chen's voice came over the intercom, welcoming passengers aboard. Among the flight crew was a familiar face, Alicia, who had requested to work this flight alongside her management duties, committed to maintaining her connection to the day-to-day passenger experience. Coffee before takeoff. M. Washington. Alicia offered as she passed through the cabin. "Yes, thank you," Jasmine replied, then gestured to the passenger beside her, an elderly black woman who appeared slightly nervous. "And perhaps for my seatmate as well." Of course, Alicia responded with genuine warmth, turning to the woman. "Ma'am, would you care for coffee or another beverage before we depart?" The woman's surprised smile at being acknowledged so respectfully confirmed what Jasmine already knew. The work wasn't finished, but real progress was being made. As the aircraft lifted into the clear blue sky, Jasmine opened her laptop to review her conference presentation titled "Transforming Corporate Culture Through Lived Experience." The final slide featured a simple quote that had become Skyline's unofficial motto. "Respect isn't a luxury upgrade, it's the standard for every journey." This powerful story reminds us that discrimination often thrives in environments where accountability is absent. Jasmine's experience highlights how bias can manifest in seemingly small actions that collectively create hostile environments for people of color. The airline crew's behavior, from questioning her legitimacy to providing inferior service, represents the everyday indignities many minorities face in spaces where they're perceived as not belonging. True leadership means experiencing your organization from all perspectives, especially those most vulnerable to mistreatment. Jasmine's undercover approach revealed problems that executive reports could never capture. By personally experiencing discrimination within her company, she gained authentic insight that drove meaningful change. This story also demonstrates the ripple effect of accountability. When Trevor faced consequences, it sent a powerful message throughout the organization. Similarly, when Alicia was rewarded for her integrity, it reinforced that doing the right thing matters. The most effective transformations come from addressing both individual behavior and systemic issues. By implementing new training, creating accountability systems, and changing corporate culture, Skyline created lasting change rather than simply removing bad apples. Have you ever witnessed discrimination in a service environment? What did you do about it? Share your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe for more powerful content exposing everyday discrimination. Don't forget to share with someone who might need this reminder that speaking up against injustice can create real change. Thank you for watching, and remember, sometimes the most powerful tool against discrimination is simply refusing to accept it as normal.